Welcome back, everyone. So today we are going to do kind of a seasonal top-up of fluids. We're going to check the air filter. We're working on a 2019 Nissan Qashqai. So generally in the summer, I like to open the hood and check the coolant or the antifreeze level because we deal with more heat in the engine because there's heat outside, so we want to make sure that level is at an appropriate point. Secondarily, when we approach fall and we're heading into winter as we are in the northern climate, we have shrinkage often that happens in some of our fittings and some of our hoses to our radiator, and we can get a little bit of leakage in the coolant system. And for that same reason, we want to double check our coolant levels to make sure that they're appropriate so we don't have any unforeseen issues while we're driving in winter conditions. So we're going to start with the coolant reservoir. Now there are two types of coolant reservoirs. One that is under pressure. Years ago, you could see the actual radiator in the front of the vehicle, and it had a cap or an access point right on it. And that cap, that lid always said, do not open when hot. It was a pressure cap. Today, in the modern vehicles, we don't have that same access. The access is through an overflow jug. And that overflow jug, generally, when the vehicle expands with heat, the coolant around the engine, that keeps your engine from overheating, can expand as the engine gets warm, and it expands up into the overflow reservoir. Some of those reservoirs are under pressure, similar to how the old radiator was, and others are not. On this vehicle, it is a pressure reservoir, and we'll show you what that looks like. This vehicle is cold, so we're going to be okay to open everything here. But if you do have a warm vehicle or hot vehicle, you need to let it cool down before you touch this pressurized coolant reservoir tank. So the lid on this reservoir clearly shows a hand with radiating heat. That symbol indicates that this is a pressurized overflow reservoir. So we know that it's cold, so we're going to open it up and take the cap off. And it actually hissed a bit, is even though this vehicle has been sitting cold for hours, it still had a little bit of pressure in it, which is remarkable. When you look at these reservoirs, they generally are two parts. There's a bottom and a top, and you can see a very clear delineation between those two parts as the tank has a seam in it. And along that seam area, if you look carefully, you will see usually a fill minimum, fill maximum. Now, understanding that coolant expands, you do not want to have this thing filled up to the top ever, because if it expands in the heat, it could expand and burst the tank if there's no room for that liquid to raise and drop with those temperature changes. So be careful never to overfill this one and never to fill it, frankly. You have to look for those markers of min and max or low and high on the side of each tank. So what I find common with these overflow reservoirs is that min-max level is often right near that seam or at that seam. And the labels are actually pressed into the white plastic, so they're very difficult to delineate and see. So use your cell phone flashlight, or if you have another flashlight, pull it out. It helps a lot. If you've got a rag, grab a rag, clean off the side of this thing and search for it. Sometimes shining a light into the reservoir allows you to see the liquid more clearly. And sometimes these reservoirs, they get orange all the way through and it's hard to tell where the level is from the outside. So if you have to, just look down in and see how far it is down in. So this reservoir is a little bit low. What we're going to use is a pre-mix 50-50 coolant. You can get this at your local automotive store. Remember, this is dangerous. It is a chemical, so if you spill it, you do need to clean it up properly. Okay, so pro tip. You've got your jug. We want to pour. We like to think we can pour right at the front of the jug. The problem is that doesn't allow us to tip the jug very much. So ideally, you've got a funnel and you're putting this in. Now remember, that funnel needs to be perfectly clean. You can't use a dirty oil funnel, and we don't have a perfectly clean funnel. So what we're going to do in this pro tip is turn our jug sideways. And that allows me to tip quite a bit. See how far horizontal I can get this jug, which is much easier to control than if I were to go here. It's already coming out right there. And that is very difficult to pour. So I like to bring it down, get it on its side, get as close to the hole as possible. And there we go. It didn't take much to top up, but important to do that. If you ever find this reservoir completely empty, here's my recommendation. Top it up to the max level, start the car, leave the cap off, and let it run for 3 or 4 minutes, not long. And what that'll do is it'll turn on the water pump and cycle that fluid into the radiator. Because if it's dry here, it may in fact be low in your radiator and in your coolant system. And if you drive away, it may take everything out of the reservoir because it needed everything and you're still low. So you run it for 3 or 4 minutes and see if that level goes down. If it does go down, then you top it up, seal it up, shut the vehicle off, and you know you're good. If you find that it's really, really low and you've been checking it regularly every 4 or 5 months, you may want to check to see if you have a leak anywhere. Check your driveway, look for it. This is typically very, very bright fluorescent green. So you can see these in the snow or on your driveway. And it has a sweet smell to it. Another thing we're always told when we were kids, if you spill this on the ground because of its sweet smell, animals sometimes like to drink it and it will kill them. This is poison. So if you do spill some, if you miss the lid, if you miss the opening, and you do spill some and it goes down onto the ground, make sure you clean this stuff up, okay? Because you don't want your family pet to come out and give it a try because it could be very dangerous for them. So now we're going to move on to the washer fluid for your windshield washer system. Some of these, the tank is up and quite visible. Some are very hidden and very difficult to see. In new vehicles, you don't even get this much exposure, and this vehicle is only 5 years old. So in this one, it's very clear where it is. It's up front, and it has a symbol of your typical shaped windshield, and it has dotted spray lines to indicate that this is your washer fluid. Again, you need to be careful. It is about 8 inches in this case from your antifreeze level, or your coolant, antifreeze and coolant being the same term. You don't want to put antifreeze in here because antifreeze is greasy and windshield washer fluid is not. It's watery. You don't want greasy liquid going up onto your windshield while you're driving. So we're going to grab our washer fluid and we're going to top that up. So the technical names, your antifreeze coolant is ethylene glycol. This is a methyl alcohol. It is very, very flammable. It needs to be an alcohol, otherwise it'll freeze on windshields in cold weather. I always find it fascinating when you watch a movie and somebody's cut their hand or they're dirty and they walk to the gas station pump and they wash their hands in the windshield washer area. That must be quite south where they fill those up with water. If you do that in this region, you're going to wash your hands in alcohol, and that's not going to be a good idea. So we're using a minus 35 degree washer fluid, and again we're going to tip this not forward like this, we're going to tip it on its side. And this reservoir we can top up right to the top. There's no expansion on this at all. It is just a holding tank. We know this one to be empty, so it should take this entire jug. Now with washer fluid, it really is about how frequently you're washing your windshield. Most of the new vehicles have a warning on the dash light that will pop up and say washer fluid level low. If you have an older vehicle, you need to be paying attention to how frequently you're using it and spraying it. This is clearly not something you want to fill every 6 months. You want to fill this almost monthly because you don't want to be out in a slushy environment and not have proper washer fluid. We'll put that cap back on. This cap is just a press cap, unlike the coolant, which is a twisted cap. So we're just going to move our way around the engine from the passenger side over to the driver's side. So our next thing is we're going to check the oil level and see where it is sitting. We're going to pull our dipstick out. We want to have a rag. Often the oil, when you just shut an engine off, will spray up a little bit on the dipstick. So it's a good idea to wipe this off once nice and clean, and then just put it back in and out once quickly. While it's out, you can see there are usually 2 notches, sometimes some hash marks where you've got, in this case, an L and an H, so low and high. You want to be comfortably between those lines. Again, when you put this back in, you need to make sure you put it in all the way so that it collects the oil out of the oil pan in the bottom of the engine and marks properly on this. So now we have a very clean read on this, and we are on the lower side of the center mark. So we're going to put just a touch of oil in this. It's not going to take much, but we'll top it up a little bit. Now our engine oil fill is usually somewhere on the side or the top of the engine. It's usually a black covered cap. And they all typically have the same style of symbol, which is really an old-fashioned oil container on the top of them. And if you're uncertain, just grab your bare finger and put it inside the hole, and you can see how you'll pull out black oil on your finger. So in this instance, we're going to be pouring liquid on top of the engine, and we're going to be pouring oil, which is thick and goopy. And if we spill, that's going to set all over the engine. And then when you warm up this engine, you're going to have that slowly burn off. And if you spill a lot, you're going to have smoke and everything happening up front here, and you're going to smell it. So we do not want to spill here. Ideally, we don't want to spill anything, but if we're in our washer fluid and our coolant, when we spill here, we're hitting the inside of the fender wall. We can wipe the ground if we do spill a little drop or two, but it doesn't catch on fire, it doesn't burn. We don't want to put in any dirt into the engine because that dirt will get ground into your engine parts and can cause damage. We'll set that in. Check in your owner's manual or online for your brand. You want to make sure you're putting the right oil in. There can be some slight variation for a minor top-up. The difference between 0W30, 5W30, and 10W30 isn't going to be critical if you're putting in a half a quart to top up a vehicle between oil changes, but you start getting really extreme, you don't want to be putting in diesel oil or other things. So best practice, grab your manual, look it up online, find out what oil the engine should take. Ideally, if the engine has been getting synthetic oil, you want to keep putting synthetic oil in, but in a pinch, if you're low, it is better to put non-synthetic in to top it up before you get it to the oil change than it is to run it with low oil. So make sure you get the right one. Now generally when you look at a dipstick and it says low, historically what that meant is if you're at that low point, it will take a liter or it will take a quart. And that liter or quart is the indication that it is a liter or quart low, and when you put that full liter in, it's going to get you up to where you want to be. In this case, we were on the low side of the high-low mark on this particular dipstick. So we're going to put in a half a quart or half a liter, roughly the same volume, a quart and a liter. We're going to let it sit for a bit, and then we'll check the dipstick to see if it's put us at the proper level. You want to hold these. Sometimes they're wobbly. Another thing is when you're filling them up, you want to make sure that the oil is going into the engine and it's not pouring out. So you don't want to put too much in at too quick a pace. So I don't like filling a funnel with oil. I like to just use it to guide the oil in. Some people will just dump this in and it fills the funnel up, and that sometimes can be too much capacity, and then it's spilling out underneath onto the engine wall. So that feels about halfway down on that jug. Now your funnel is still dripping oil. You want to let that drip a bit, so it's good idea to just leave it in there. We're waiting for a bit for the oil to make it through the engine and down into the oil pan anyway, so we can check to see our fluid level. So we're just going to let that sit there and drip. And while we're doing that, we're going to look at the brake fluid reservoir. Now, it is extremely rare for brake fluid to get low. Your brake fluid system is hydraulic. If it's getting low, that means when you press your brakes, somewhere on these little lines that go out to each one of your wheels and into your brake drums and brake shoes, you have a leak. That's concerning. You don't want a leak in that system. So it is good to check this. I generally check it every 6 months to make sure that it's at its appropriate level. I'm not a big fan of swapping it out. I know a lot of dealers will say you should change your brake fluid. Maybe I'm old school. We didn't change brake fluid. Nobody even spoke of it until I was probably 45. And now it's become somehow a regular request at the dealerships. I'll leave that guidance to you. Me personally, I don't see any reason to change it. There are no moving parts in a brake system. It's a completely sealed hydraulic system. You push liquid out, which pushes your brake shoes and your brake pads. It then releases and pushes that fluid back up into the reservoir, and it just goes back and forth like that. There's no reason for that to get hot unless you are driving really heavy brakes in like a race car. So you have no reason for you to have much concern over the quality of that brake fluid. It's a hydraulic system. It needs to be liquid and it needs to not freeze. And because it's a liquid, it's not compressing. Here's our brake fluid reservoir cap. Almost every one of these, if not every one of these, says clean filler cap before removal. The reason is this is a hydraulic brake system and you do not want dirt in it. If you get dirt in a hydraulic brake system, it can stop a brake from functioning properly, and that could be very dangerous. So not only do I clean the cap, but I clean around it as well. So it's not just the cap, it can be the dirt that's lodged underneath it. And we're going to twist it off. And if we needed to top that up, it's just as simple as that. It's not a pressure system. The brake system is very similar to your antifreeze system in that you don't want it full because fluid will go in and out of it as you compress your brakes. When you pressure brakes, fluid goes out into the lines, and when you retract, some of that fluid comes back into the reservoir, so you don't want that full. And on the side, you can see a min and max on it as well. This max is a little clearer. It's on the top edge of it here on the passenger side. So we'll show you a quick close-up of that, and you can see this reservoir has an appropriate amount of fluid in it. Okay, so we're going to check our oil again and see whether that amount filled it up. So again, good practice, bring it out, clean it. Put it back in all the way, pull it back out. So this is an ideal level now. We are over the center point on the high, between the high and the low, and that's going to work just fine. I'm going to grab our funnel and just put our cloth underneath it in case it's still dripping, and put our oil cap back on. Now we're in good shape. So that's a quick overview of the fluid top-ups and the access points that you get from the front of your vehicle. So you have your coolant, you have your washer fluid for your windshield washers, you have your engine oil, which you're checking with a dipstick, and your brake fluid oil. Now we do have separate oil in the gearbox or the rear end. If this had a rear end, it's not an all-wheel drive. Those are sealed units, so we can't check those with a dipstick, and they're not accessible through the front here. Some older vehicles, some models will have a transmission dipstick. It is going to be going in for an oil change in another month. So we've topped up the oil to get to that point, and when it gets in for service, they'll be able to check the transmission fluid for us. Now we're going to work on the air filter. We're going to access it and we're going to change it. So it's often difficult to know where the air filter is. Generally what you're looking for is an air intake area. So where's this sort of tubing where air is going to come in from the front of the vehicle, and you can follow that around and it gives you some idea of where the air filter will be. In this case, that tubing is over here on the driver's side, and you've got a whole sort of tubing manifold that's on top of the battery. Now I know this will just pop off. You might want to check with friends or with your maintenance friend. But we'll show you how this one pops off, and then we'll get access to the filter box in behind. Set that out of the way, and then you can see your filter box is exposed completely, and you can see how dirty this filter is. Now it has quick releases on it, one on each side for this one. You just pull on the top of those where it's protruded. So they just snap in, and then you pull them out. That is a very, very dirty filter. That means this engine has been starving for air for quite a while, and it's quite greasy and dirty. So it's moist. The inside is beautiful. So you can clearly see the value of having a filter. Keeps all that dirt from getting into the engine. So we've got our old filter here. We went to our local automotive shop we picked up a new one. Just going to give these a quick eyeball. Before and after, quite a difference. So we'll just slide this one in. Again, we're just going to push these up and snap them over. You pull them, to open them, we pull the tab on the end. To close them, we push the centerpiece. Once that's done, we'll reposition our air intake manifold. Sometimes they snap in, sometimes they just set in like this. And that is it. We have replaced our filter. Incidentally, that same air intake manifold was over top of our battery. So if you need to boost your vehicle, you're going to need to remove that as well. So that's it. Thanks again for watching. I hope this helped a bunch. You can top up your fluids when you need them. You can change your air filter when you need. So this vehicle is now in pretty good shape until it goes in for its next service. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of our latest videos.